Thank you. Friends, we have all assembled here today to pay our heartfelt tributes to our dear friend, mentor, and guide, Mr. John Shaw, who had touched the hearts of thousands of lives with his simplicity, humility, and compassion. I will now request Reverend Dr. Dexter Mabin, Rector of the St. Andrew's Church, to initiate the prayer meeting.
Good evening. We are gathered this evening to thank God for the life that God provides for us, for the life of Mr. John Shaw. Our prayers, our thoughts especially go with Dr. Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, family, friends, and colleagues. The gift of life that we celebrate, friendships shared, and everything that means so much for us. This evening, we are joined by the St. Andrew's Church Choir, and we are going to sing 4 songs, and we're going to request each one of us to join as we invite God's presence. Jesus, joy of man's desiring, Handel's Lago, Abide with me, and the Handel's Hallelujah. The St. Andrew's Church Choir.
and ever. And he shall reign forever. And he shall reign forever and ever. He shall reign forever and ever. King of kings, forever and ever, and Lord of lords, hallelujah, hallelujah. And he shall reign forever and ever. King of kings and Lord of lords, King of kings and Lord of lords, we shall reign forever and ever, forever and ever, forever and ever. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Thank you, Andrew Church Choir. Our choir is directed by Mr. Andrew Bhaganathan. And today we have Mr. Sujit Matthews, who was helping us. Thank you, Dr. Kiran, for this generosity inviting us to be part of this prayer. And especially want to thank Dr. Paul Salins for facilitating, inviting us this evening. Thank you, Ms. Aisha and Ms. Seema. Before we say a prayer, I'd like to read brief verses from the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, chapter 3. What gain have the workers from the toil? I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, he has put a sense of past and future into their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. I'd like to say a prayer for the life and testimony of Mr. John Shaw. Those of us who would please kindly close your eyes. We'll say a prayer. Creator God, source of all life and blessing, we thank you for the meaning of life that we find, for the meaning of life beyond, of the past, the present, and the future. As we gather this evening, we thank you for the life and work of Mr. John Shaw, contributions that transcend not only family and friends, but contributions to our nation. We thank you for the visions that were shared, friendships that were celebrated, and values cherished. We especially want to commit Dr. Kiran Mazumdar Shaw. We pray for strength and courage, a partnership so well lived, a friendship that was shared, a deep bond with Mr. John Shaw. We pray for family and friends, colleagues, memories that are so very precious. We pray for your peace, dear God, which passeth all understanding. You promise life and life in all its fullness. As we continue our journey, we pray for peace and blessing, the hope that we celebrate and share, and values that continue to celebrate justice and peace in our own lives, in our own times. We give you all the thanks, all the glory, all the honor. We pray this prayer in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Dexter and the choir. It was really magical. I would now like to invite Avril to sing one of John's favorite hymns, Amazing Grace. Over to you, Avril.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious was that grace appeared the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. There's grace this brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me on. When we've been here 10,000 years and shining like the sun, these was blessed days to sing God. God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Thank you, Avril. That was really beautiful. I would like to thank Reverend Dexter, Choir Director Andrew Bhagatnathan, the beautiful choir of St. Andrew's Church, and dear Avril. We will now begin with the tributes for Mr. John Shaw. And to begin, may I please request Kiran Mazumdar Shaw to start.
This is a tribute to my darling John. What can I say about a man who was my beloved husband, my best friend, and my trusted business partner? John was everything to me. We shared 24 wonderful years building our lives together and our company. Without John, Biocon may never have been the company it is. Without John, I would never have been the entrepreneur that I am. And without John, so many wonderful things may never have happened. I'm grateful to have loved and married such a loving and proud man. He brought out the best in me always. When we got married and I started calling myself Kiran Shaw, it was John who insisted that I call myself Kiran Mazumdar Shaw. After all, it is Kiran Mazumdar who is the self-made woman entrepreneur, he would say. He always pushed me in front and let me take all the glory. He was truly the wind beneath my wings that made me fly high. As my mentor, he taught me a lot. His truisms were many, but there are a few worth mentioning. Business is full of problems, he would say, but as a good leader, you must identify the most important problem that requires to be solved first, and the rest will solve themselves. He always encouraged me to think big, but reined me in if I got too carried away. At Biocon, he would say, we are scientifically aggressive, but financially conservative. This was his pet phrase. You are the scientific brain, you are the scientific visionary, he would say, and I am your financial controller and your financial advisor. We were a perfect team. John has left a huge void in my life, which I can only fill with wonderful memories of the incredible life we shared for over 24 years. I only hope that his memories and his spiritual presence gives me back the strength to rebuild my life. I love you, John Shaw. Thank you for making me a complete woman. As a fitting tribute to John, who loved the poems of Robert Burns, I would like to recite one of our favorites. John and I would often sit together holding hands, and John would say, let's recite this poem. It's beautiful. It's about you and me. And the poem was John Anderson, My Joe John. But I will take poetic license and replace it with John Shaw. So let me recite it for all of you. John Shaw, my Joe John, when we were first acquaint, your locks were like the raven, your bonny brow was brent. And now your brow is bare, John, your locks are like the snow. But blessings on your frosty paw, John Shaw, my Joe. John Shaw, my Joe John, we climbed the hill together. At many a canty day, John, we've had with one another. Now we maun totter down, John, and hand in hand we'll go and sleep together at the foot. John Shaw, my Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran. John was indeed a man who stood tall with his values and inspired us all. And as they say, behind every successful woman, there is a great man. John Shaw indeed was that great man. I will now request John's brother, Alistair Shaw, and his wife, Jessie Shaw, who have joined us through Zoom from Scotland, to pay their tributes, please.
It is said you can pick your friends, but you cannot pick your relatives. But had I had the choice of a brother, I could not have selected anyone better. John and I were the only offspring of John and Margaret Shaw. John was 3 years my junior. We had a happy childhood. I recall cricket matches in summer at the local park and football in the winter. I must confess at times to taking advantage of my status and stature as the older brother. Then one day, John became the bigger brother and not to be messed with physically. He grew to over 6 feet, while I dallied at 5'9". My excuse was post-war rationing, but of course it was more likely genetic. We attended the same schools and later the same university, Glasgow University. We both became officers in the Reserve Army, John as an infantry and me as a medic. Before I come back and conclude, I would like to hand over to Jessie, my wife, who will now talk about her introduction to John. Jessie.
Thank you. John has been my brother-in-law for over 52 years. And though I first met him in 1968, when Alistair took me home to meet his family, when in June 1969, Alistair and I became engaged, he revealed himself to be a kind, thoughtful, and generous future brother-in-law. John and Alistair's parents were a bit surprised that we had become engaged so quickly. Theirs had been a 7-year courtship. John was then a quiet, shy, 19-year-old student at Glasgow University. However, he went off and cashed in savings to buy a bottle of champagne and a beautiful Edinburgh Crystal whiskey decanter, which we cherish to this day. He was our best man when we married in 1970. John's career took him out of the UK, but he often came back to visit us in the summer months, and he shared many Christmases in Blairgowrie with us and met many of our friends. When our John, named after John, was 3 years old and Ailey was 10 months, Alistair went off to summer camp in Germany with the army. The family, which included me, wee John and Ailey, and Uncle John, went off on its annual jaunt to Rassie. Rassie is a tiny island between Skye and the mainland, and at that time, the journey was 12 hours from Glasgow, including 3 ferry crossings. John drove our car with me and the children, and the older relatives travelled in another car. These car trips to and from Rassay were a great way to bond our friendship, listening to Sinatra or classical music, clearly sharing the same taste in music and humour. He was infinitely patient with the frequent stops to feed the baby and change our nappies. Such memories stay with you forever and comfort me at this time of loss.
Our children were always thrilled to see their Uncle John. His career with Coates Payton was spent almost entirely outside the UK. He would join us for holiday breaks, especially Christmas and New Year. His visits always engendered excitement, not just for his presence, but also for his generosity. The children would say, "I wonder what Uncle John will bring. I wonder what Uncle John was bring." That was so oft repeated that the youngest of our children, Jenny, simply ran the whole concept together and referred to John as Uncle Bring. We have many happy memories of these days and photo reminders. One shows John allowing the girls, Ailey and Jenny, to paint his face while nephew John also looked on. He had a great way with children. A Coates family who were very kind to John were the Bruce family in South Africa. Ian and Lorna had two girls, Julia and Carol. They were fond of John and enjoyed banter with him. Lorna recalls listening to an LP of Carrie Simon with the line, "Clouds in your coffee, clouds in your coffee." Carol, who was 4, asked a typical 4-year-old question. How did they get there? After a short pause, John said quietly, "Magic." The perfect answer for a 4-year-old child. Our family became convinced that Uncle John was a lifetime bachelor. We were both surprised and delighted to learn that during his time in India, he had become friendly with an Indian lady by the name of Kieran. The romance blossomed and they were married 24 years ago on 9th April 1998 at a ceremony with family at New Milne, close by Blairgowrie. We had the pleasure then of meeting virtually all of Kieran's close family. That included Kieran's wonderful mother, Yamini, whose loss Kieran suffered so recently. What a partnership John and Kieran had. John left Coates and teamed his love for Kieran with his advice and help with the financial side of her rapidly growing biotech business. But love was the driver. I quote Kieran as referring to John as her soulmate. John suffered the cruel ravages of dementia over perhaps more years than many of you may have recognized. But Kieran was always there for him. Whether it was his kidney cancer and complications or later his dementia, Kieran was there for John, making sure that not just the best local, but the best international treatment was available. Over the past year particularly, life has been difficult, not just for John, but also for Kieran. Her unflinching loyalty and devotion led her to appoint Betsy and Tom's as 2 superb nurses who cared for him till the end. We experienced that care at first hand when John and the nurses spent several days with us at our home in Blairgowrie in August of this year. So recent. I think John had some appreciation of his return to our home and our family. He was tearful when he departed, perhaps realizing that this might be his last trip to see us. We have warm memories of that visit, but as we recall the life of John and his devotion to what is now an extended international family, we have difficulty holding back a tear, that universal sign of deep loss. We thank God for John and the wonderful memories he has given us. We thank Kieran for her devoted care over so many years. Thank you all.
Thank you, Alistair and Jessie, for sharing those wonderful memories of John's story. Really brought him alive for all of us here in the audience. I would now like to request Kiran's brother Ravi Mazumdar and his wife Catherine, who have also joined us through Zoom from Toronto since they could not be here in person. Over to you, Ravi and Catherine.
I hope you can all hear me. It is indeed, I feel very sad not being with all of you over there. But I had a chance to see John the last day when he was looking good. And unfortunately, he passed away too soon. So dear friends, Kiran and family, as we gather on this occasion to remember John, I'm pretty sure that John would not want us to mourn his loss, but to celebrate his life. John entered our lives rather late, but we were fortunate to have been touched by his generosity, his simple wisdom, and his ethical vision and values. I will always remember John as someone who was fair and with no prejudice within his bones. He was gregarious, worldly, and a person who accepted Kiran's family as his own. There are a number of things I can directly attribute to John. John introduced me to the world of art as I had never seen. He introduced me to Frank Sinatra and Julio Iglesias as I never imagined. And I admired his interest in history. And most importantly, I think John was not a snob. Indeed, he wouldn't suffer them. One of the important things I must point out is the role that John played in the Kiran-John couple. He was secure enough that he always gave Kiran the space she needed and commands. Although in his own right, he was a very successful man, in spite of that, he worked in the background supporting John. Kiran, rather. I hope that Catherine and I can comfort and protect Kiran in the manner John did so well. He was an ethical pillar for Biocon, and the fact that it has grown and flourished is no small measure due to his influence. I would like to end by thanking all the friends and family who have helped ease the burdens that Kiran has carried through these several years. Especially, I would like to note the friendship of Bela, Juan, and Miru, who have been great sources of support. Thank you. And finally, to my dearest Kiran, I want you to remember we are here for you always. Thank you.
Dear Kiran, dear Dave, dear friends, I'm sorry for not being with you in person, but I was struck by COVID at the worst possible time, and I'm still recovering. Dear John, the first time we met, it was at a party in Koramangala. I thought that you were so tall, and I could not understand your Scottish accent because of the noise. I knew immediately that you were someone of great importance to Kiran. She was totally besotted. We met many times at her place or at yours, where you convinced me of your good taste with your fine paintings and fine cheeses. You then joined our family during a lovely, intimate wedding in Scotland. Kiran was radiant and you so handsome in your kilt. You came to live in India and built Glenmore together. It was your idea to live near Biocon in a large property with dogs. Both of you filled it with happiness and art, yours from Scotland, hers from India. You had a wonderful life together, filled with work, family, friends, travels, and philanthropy. You were the favorite of Kiran's friends with your easygoing approach to people. You were a rock, her sounding board, the love of her life. In early 2000 in Bangalore, you met Juan, a Spaniard, and Hector. Juan became your best friend and soon became part of your family. While writing this, I remembered the many wonderful times we spent together. You were a favorite of my parents and had a very special bonds to our kids, Claire and Eric. I remember you in Glenmore in the pool with Julio Iglesias on the music system, in Thailand in our favorite massage parlor, in Myanmar on Lake Inle, in Turkey in the grotto, in Spain on the boat jumping, on a torrent singing, but also in Musée d'Orsay in front of Starry Night. Life became less easy. You had a cancer, a surgery, probably a stroke. You never complained. Kiran was always there fighting for you, fighting with you. You recovered from your cancer, which was a miracle. The last years were hard. You lost your ability to communicate. Kiran was very courageous. She became your rock. Dear John, as your mom and my dad would say, you had a great life. We will miss you. Rest in peace. Dear Kiran, we love you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravi and Catherine. I will now request Dev, Kiran's younger brother, to kindly be here and pay his tributes. Dev.
Dear friends and Kiran, today we mourn the loss of a wonderful family man, John Shaw. John was proud to be Kiran's husband, but Kiran was equally proud to be married to him. He was extremely generous to me and my family and was always welcoming when I visited Bangalore. We had wonderful conversations around the dinner table and usually on topics on history. One of John's requirements at the dinner table was that everybody should put away their mobile phones, including Kiran, which was always a tough thing for Kiran to do. The only time we were actually allowed to use our mobile phones was to Google things that were that were being contested by John and the rest of us. It's a little known fact that actually John never owned a smartphone. John was very patient with my mother. He always kept company at parties at Glenmore. In closing, I can say that John was the wind beneath Kiran's wings. He helped Kiran build Biocon to be the world-class company it is today. He also built Glenmore, his beloved home in Bangalore, to be an oasis of tranquility in this bustling city. He will be missed. Rest in peace, John Shaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Dev. I would now request John's best friend, Juan Uriac, who's also joined us from Barcelona virtually, to pay his tributes, please.
Hi. Hello, dear friends all. This beautiful history of friendship with my great friend John began more than 20 years ago. During a visit to Bangalore with my friend Hector for work, we meet John, and he suggests we have dinner with him at Glenmore. Since then, and after meeting Kiran a few months later in Barcelona, I can only say that day after day, my friendship with John, Kiran, and family increased. What a pity we didn't meet before. Also, for my family in Spain, fathers, brothers, and especially for Juan and my son, it was the beginning of fantastic moments. These have been wonderful years in which we have shared a lot. John traveled the world during his coach days, and he always said that Barcelona, where he spent 6 wonderful years, was his favorite posting. He loved football and backed Barcelona with great loyalty, just like he had for his home team Rancher in Scotland. John used to regularly walk to the Camp Nou stadium with my son every time he visited Barcelona to watch a game. Every morning during a lot of years, he called me from Bangalore to discuss the games. We listened to music. His favorite was Julio Iglesias, who took many holidays together discovering new places. I would like to share with you some funny anecdotes. One of them is John was not a swimmer, but when he went to Maldives for holidays together with his family, Kiran pushed him into the sea with his life jacket, of course. He was like a little boy of 63 years old. He discovered that day that he cut throat. What a scare John had. After, this is the second one, after his kidney operation in London, the first place he came to was Barcelona, and his first work was in the below Sitges. We tailored that meeting magical moments. For many years, we repeat our visit to Sitges, and we sat in the same bar, in the same drank the same. John a Coca-Cola, Kieran a Campari, and me a beer. In 2017, New York is the last one. We went one day with Kieran to listen to jazz. It was a terrible performance, but we had a lot of fun. Halfway through the performance, we left, despite sharing the artist's name is Rodriguez all the time. Since then, our war cry has been Épala Rodriguez. Of course, the best thing about my dear friend John was his simplicity, joy, love, generosity, and his very Scottish way of being. I marvel at the relationship with Kieran. Whether they were together or not, she was always in his heart. He explained me with pride and satisfaction the first step on his relationship and beginning in love and in Biocon, which were very important. We give everything to create with Kieran a wonderful project that is now a reality. When I say everything, I say everything. Illusion, work, adaptation. He found his home in India. All this was a great life lesson for me. A thousand thanks to you, my dear friend John. I have been able to meet my great Indian family. Kieran, Ravi, Kat, Dave, Isabel, and children, and also the Scottish family, Alistair and Jesse. From the first day, you have all been wonderful. I believe in destiny, and it is the one that has given us the opportunity to be together for so many wonderful years. Everything will continue without you, but I feel that I will carry you every day in my heart. I would also like to thank and mention all the staff who have been with John for so many years in his long illness, especially to his nurses, Bastin and Tom. I wanted to live for the end of his long struggle for the last 4 years, 2018-2022. He has struggled a lot with his illness. He understood many things, but could not communicate verbally. It was terrible for everyone because John loved to talk, laugh, etc. We could only express emotions and cry together. I will never forget his last days in the hospital with him before he died, how he fought. We were even able to shake hands in his characteristic give me five. My dear friend John, I already noticed your physical absence. You know well that you will always be present in my life. I love you.
Thank you, Juan. I know you and Johnson made some wonderful memories together. I would now request Dr. Devi Shetty to kindly come up and pay his tributes to Johnson.
Friends, 15 years ago, John was diagnosed with an illness and he was in the ICU of Narayana Hridayalaya, and outside the ICU, Kiran and I were discussing about the future treatment plans based on the expert opinion from all the doctors. Most of the doctors' recommendation was to leave him alone in peace for the next few months. Kiran always defied all the logics and all the expert opinions. Many times, the strategic decisions she took didn't make much sense to me, but the past experience convinced me that I should bet on her blindly and everything will be fine. But this time, the decision she was to take was about the person she loves the most in this world, her loving husband, John. From the beginning of this episode, Kiran always believed that somewhere in this world there is a place, there is a person who can cure her loving husband. She believed in that, and we believed in Kiran. Thank you, Kiran, for giving us 15 more years of fruitful life with John. Thank you for restoring the joy and the loud welcome Scottish hug at Glenmore for 15 years. John was a very lucky man to have an adoring wife like you, and we all are lucky to have a great friend like you. Thank you, Kiran.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Devi Shetty. Indeed, we really had 15 long years of wonderful life of John, and Kiran has been the strongest pillar behind him. I will now request Dr. Paul Salins to kindly come and pay his tributes.
It's a great joy that I could have this 15 years because of John's cancer. When the Cancer Institute had to be built, I was invited to come, and that is how a friendship began with this extraordinary human being, John, and of course, Kiran. Really, I became very close to John because we shared many interests. We both loved classical music. We could speak about architecture or literature or history, politics or cricket. And he always shared with such brilliance and such eclectic intelligence. I was always amazed. Only much later, when he developed cancer and when we started looking at it, one day I suddenly realized when we did a brain scan that what was there actually visible in the brain scan was an amazing phenomenon. He had a massive stroke, and how he could come out of that with this level of competence intellectually was beyond belief. I have never seen this happen because usually in very young children, if you lose part of the brain, it functions, they have some degree of plasticity. So it taught me two things. One, he must have been an extraordinary person with such very varied intellectual milieu and such plasticity, redundancy in his brain, that even after such a loss, he could really come back. But I have also seen that there was something else that was really behind all this. That is the life he lived with Kiran throughout all this. It was the way Kiran actually supported him. The secret I now know was that he never had the battle alone. I think it has been very humbling for me to witness how united in mind and spirit John and Kiran were. Such amalgamation of soul and spirit, of shared taste, values and purpose is very rare. But when it is present in a relationship, I realize that it overcomes human limitations, even the ravages of stroke and cancer. I will miss a wonderful friend. And although we met due to medical reasons, it has been, he has just been left a very special place. He has a very special place in my own heart. And he actually taught me what it means to be a noble human being with generosity of spirit. John will always be in my thoughts and Kiran in my prayers. As Jesus said, do not let your heart be troubled. We never are alone.
Thank you, Dr. Salins. You indeed were a very special friend for John, sir. John, sir, as many of us addressed him, was the vice chairman of Biocon for over 2 decades and an integral part of the company's evolution into a leading global biopharmaceutical company. An inspiring business leader, he guided his colleagues on financial and strategic matters relentlessly. He played a key role in ensuring the highest levels of corporate governance in the Biocon group. He retired from the Biocon's board of directors last year due to health reasons. With that, I will now request Dr. Arun Chandavarkar from Biocon to pay a tribute to John, sir, on behalf of everyone at Biocon Group.
I think, first of all, let me begin by expressing, on behalf of all Bioconites, our sincerest and deepest condolences and sympathies to Kiran. As I walked up to the dais now, I saw that photograph. That was a face that I encountered every day for 20 years. As my office was next to John's. John would always, as he walked into his room, peep into my room. I used to be in the office by around 8:30, 8:45. John would come in around maybe 9:30 or so. He would peep into my room and with the say a booming good morning and a broad grin. And that would really be the most cheerful beginning to my day in the office. John didn't actually stop at greeting just me. He was a people's person. He had a way to connect with all employees and staff, no matter what the level. I remember every time he would enter the gates, he would stop, greet, and salute the security staff. And they would reciprocate that warmth enthusiastically. I also know how sought after John was by all employees when it came to our annual Biocon Day or even the departmental events where we had to give out the rewards and recognition. He received the highest or the loudest cheer as he walked up to the stage to give out the awards. And he made it a point to shake hands, congratulate, and wish every awardee who sometimes the number went to a couple of hundred. And he would be standing there patiently on the stage for over an hour, insisting that he would meet and greet every employee who received the award. I also learned a lot from John. I know it's not just Kiran who relied on John in terms of a second opinion. I too relied significantly on John on many things. In fact, I would walk into John's room and would confide with him the doubts I sometimes had on Kiran's approach to certain issues. And John would listen to me patiently. And then with a broad grin, a wink, and maybe a conspiratorial tone, decide that come, let's conspire something together and convince Kiran. So John also taught me the art of brevity. I know I'm speaking too long. If John was here, I wouldn't be. But John was always very clear that we had to understand the essence of an issue, not beat around the bush. Get to the heart of the problem. He would always look at, for example, from him, I learned the art of doing PowerPoint presentations, uncluttered and just with stark bullet points, communicating the essence of what the problem is. He said, cut out the frill, get to what the heart of the matter is. And that was a very valuable advice in the way I did things. The same advice John had in terms of the meetings that we had. He used to always dislike long and lengthy meetings and people discussing things over and over again. In fact, a phrase that I remember, which he often used, was a camel is a horse designed by a committee. And that is something that we carry to this day in terms of how we try to conduct our meetings. We ensure that we begin on time and end on time. John was Scottish by origin, an Indian at heart, but a global citizen in the sense that he had lived and traveled many, many places, especially during his days at Coatswiela. That knowledge of Spanish, that knowledge of art, history, and local culture helped Biocon greatly in terms of our network, especially in the Spanish world, Mexico, Cuba, South America, and Spain. John and Kiran, of course, opened their home to business visitors. So Glenmore was not just their home, it almost became a home for most of us, because there were many, many evenings, almost every weekday, that we would land up at Kiran's house, and John would be the most gracious host for all of our business visitors. We cherish those moments greatly. I think whilst we all mourn our loss and share Kiran's grief, I'm quite sure if John was here today, he would walk up to me right now and say, enough grieving, Arun. There's much to be accomplished. Let's get on with it. So with those words, I think as Bioconites, I think we can honor John's legacy by trying to accomplish and reach greater heights and ensure that John can rejoice and continue to be proud, as he always was, of Kiran's accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. On behalf of all the Bioconites, as you rightly said, we all support what you said and we all stay determined to make him even more proud. I would now request Sudhaji. John was extremely fond of her and her sister Sunanda to kindly come and pay her tributes.
John was my good friend. When I looked at his blue eyes, he reminded me of the vastness of the sky. That kind of a heart he had. I used to tell John, probably your height is proportional to your heart. Maybe I'm half of your height, so I have half the generosity of yours. When we used to walk together, I used to run behind John. He was tall, and we used to talk a lot, particularly about the names in Scotland. There, John, in your family, there's no other name, John Junior, John Senior, and there John. You cannot find out any new. He said, we are Scottish people. We are very careful about spending on anything. And when I used to look at John, actually, I was fortunate to see him the last day. And I've prayed God, if John has to live like this, let him go. Let him go. Because when you love someone and you see their suffering and you will become so much dependent, then he would not have liked it. Though it's hard for everyone to take it, but knowing John, how he was, so warm, I never wanted to see him like that. He reminded me of the shloka I prayed for him. Anayasena maranam vina dainena jivanam dehante tava sanidhyam. Oh John, you have lived independently all these years with such a great capacity to make everyone laugh, everyone, to understand what it is to have a good friendship. And, you have lived independently and now you are going. And in front, whenever you want to die, you should have someone whom you love the most should be in front of you. In your case, Kiran is there. Kiran is there. You have lived a good life. I don't want to see you as a vegetable. You want to go, John, go, goodbye. Anayasena maranam. I prayed that way. It may look a little harsh, but it was good for John. And then immediately came and wrote 2 lines about John in Kannada. I don't know, many of you may understand, but may not, but my heart is in Kannada. I said, Male billinante nimma balu chanavadareenu, Male billinante adu madhuratamavallavenu, heenavagiha balu yuga yugagaliddareenu. Your life is like a rainbow. It comes in a very short time. Like Kiran, you spent 24 years, but golden years. I've seen many couples fighting all the time and celebrating 60th wedding anniversary. You are lucky you had 24 golden years, then fighting 60 years. So, Malabillinante namma balu chanavadareenu, like a rainbow you spent with him. There is no point living without affection, without participation. He gave you everything. Behind every successful woman, there's an understanding man. I always tell Murthy that one. For my success, you are an understanding man. And I tell that to John also to tell. That's the reason I dedicated one book to John, that is A Daughter from a Wishing Tree. I said, only John can get that kind of a thing. Kiran, you are very lucky to have John in your life. That's the reason he never had any jealousy about wife's success. Most Indian men don't do that. Sorry. He always enjoyed your success. And remember always good things, because, there is a saying in Kannada, Antakana dutarige kinchit daivila. When you have to go, the death will not even wait for a second. But that was there. But the kind of life you spent with him, the kind of, nobody will kiss my hand now, I know. No Indian man will kiss my hand. That's only John could do. Nobody will hug me the way John will do. Nobody will do. I miss all those things. But I always remember him inside my heart. And one day I was arguing with him about the Queen Elizabeth I, her successor. He said, wait a minute. He told me James I. I said, no, he was James III. Then he said, no, so that you will be wrong. Then he opened the book and rechecked it. He was right, I was right, because he was called James I in England, James III in Scotland. Okay. So we used to have a wonderful time. I miss John. But Kiran, we are all there. We are all there. We will not be able to replace John, I'm so sure. But 1/1,000,000th of that at least will be with you. Please remember, we are with you. John, wherever you are, you need not eat undio. Okay, which we used to fight about that. You need not worry about James I and James III. You will be in the heaven enjoying every moment and looking at us and say, okay, that's fine. Life should go on. And he will bless us. Wherever you are, John, please bless us. And Rishi used to tell, John is the perfect gentleman, because first time Rishi met John in Kiran's house, he did aarti to him. And John told once, he was not talking also. Please excuse me, I'm talking more. I'm a teacher, so I have to talk more. He said once, this is no good. It is, Kiran called me and told, Rishi should be there. Is it true or false? I do not know. There's a love he had for Rishi. And before his death, I remember him and told him his ears, John, Rishi may win. And he was holding my hand. It was so difficult to remove his hand because he knew what I was talking. It was very hard for me. Sunanda always says we had a connection with John in the last life. That's the reason when Sunda comes, Sunanda, he will say, and his face is too lit up. Sunanda and I both miss John. Wherever you are, please bless us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sudhaji, for such heart-touching tributes you paid. And I quite agree with you what you said, that behind every successful woman, there is an understanding man. And if I may add what I've always heard Kiran say, it takes a very secure man for a woman to be successful. And John indeed was that. We would now move on, and we have Mr. Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of UK, and his wife Akshita, who have sent their message. They knew John extremely well, as we heard from Sudhaji just now. Rohan Murthy would like to read out the message that we've received from them. Rohan couldn't be here, but he's joining us virtually. Over to you, Rohan.
Thank you. I will read what my sister Rishi and I wrote yesterday. This is in my sister's voice. John's heart was as big as his presence. He was full of life, warmth, personality, and yet a quiet resolve. He was always there cheering and supporting our family on several key occasions. In fact, there have not been any weddings, including our own, or any key birthdays, including Rohan's 30th, among others, in our family that have been celebrated without John and Kiran being the hosts. A wonderful memory we will always have is when John and Kiran hosted our Mehendi ceremony at Glenmore. Rishi's family had several fun Punjabis, and we only had shy South Indians. But Kiran and John came to our rescue. Kiran with her energy, John with his very warm Scottish presence, and we had a wonderful and memorable time. It was a time that gave me, Rishi, and Rishi's family to get to know John a bit better. Since then, we have met and spent time with John and Kiran on several occasions. And in all these occasions, we have shared the same experience with John, and that is his humor, his generosity, and his kindness. In front of us, at least, he didn't say much, but when he spoke, he was almost always funny. We have since then spent time with John in London. We have spent time with John in Bangalore. And we hope to have spent time with John in our new home in London most recently. Our family has borne witness to how John, along with Mummy, were part of Kiran's resolve and strength. And we always witnessed John's repeated kindness towards our aunt Sunanda, whom he always welcomed warmly in his home. What an absolutely charming gentleman. Glenmore will, of course, never be the same again without him. And for our family, Diwali Day this year was overcome by grief from not having John with us to celebrate. We will miss you, John, and may angels sing thee to thy rest, sweet prince.
Thank you, Rohan. I would now request Mr. Nandan Nilekani to kindly come and share a few words. John used to spend a lot of evenings together with a small group of people during the recent pandemic, and Nandan was one of them, and he will share his tributes.
Dear Kiran and friends, it's really a moment of great sadness for us. I do want to share our own memories of John. I've known John for 24 years, ever since they got married, and I've always been a very welcome guest at Glenmore. And as we said, we heard his booming voice, his hospitality, and so on. But in a very interesting way, we actually all became much closer during the pandemic. Now, before the pandemic, we were a group of 10 people, and every one of these people would be internationally jetting around Barcelona, London, Davos, New York. And then the pandemic grounded us all, and we were all stuck here in Bangalore. And so we decided that we would form a small group of friends who would meet often. Now, this was what we would call as meeting safely, because we said the same people meet over and over again, then we would be, we'd be safe. It's not like I would be safe because we could still get COVID from somebody else. But anyway, so we used to meet at least once a month. We used to rotate amongst our 5 homes, and Kiran would make sure that John was there every time. And that was the great thing, that John was there. John, at least towards the end, was not able to participate in the conversations, but he was there, and we know that he was responding. It was also for him a highlight that we were meeting socially like this. And that's something which I think came, so we all got very close together. I think everyone said that Kiran, without John, would not have been able to accomplish what she did. I still remember that. I think Mr. Krishna is here. Yes. I still remember once, the other 4 couples in this group all had homes in Kunur. So we tried to convince John and Kiran to buy a place in Kunur. And we said, it's like Scotland. He's even got a place called Blair Gowrie. So he looked at us as if we are daft, because if he can go to the original Scotland, why would he have to come to Kunur? But he was very polite, and he didn't say anything negative about our suggestion. But after that, we never raised that with him again. Also, I think he was such a support. I can still visualize Kiran and John on the long drive from Glenmore to the city, stuck in traffic. I could make out because Kiran would catch up on a phone call to-do list and call everybody she had to call. And you'd also see her on Twitter, so you know that she was stuck in traffic somewhere. And you can imagine John with her in the car, looking at her indulgently while she was doing all these things. So I think he was a fantastic compliment, not a trace of insecurity, always indulgent, always supportive, always taking pride in her achievements, and that really gave her the wings to fly. I remember once, Rohini, who was very close to him and unfortunately couldn't be here today, he wanted to interrupt Kiran when she was in full flow. When Kiran is in full flow, it's not easy to interrupt her. And then John looked at her and said, don't try it, forget it, don't try it. So he was very clear that if she was in full flow, then there's no point in trying to interrupt her. So I think John knew exactly, what his wife was, but also greatly loved her, supported her, indulged her, gave her all the support she wanted. And I think they had 24 wonderful years together. In the last few weeks, when we used to visit in the hospital, we could see the decline. We had a ray of hope that Sunday when he woke up, but unfortunately on Monday morning, he was gone. But I want to assure Kiran, this group that we have is called as the Black Panther Group. The reason it's called the Black Panther Group was one of the, when you're in pandemic times, you do crazy things, right? So one of this group was to go and find the Black Panther. My wife was very addicted to finding the Black Panther. So we took this group. Unfortunately, John could not come, but the rest of us went and actually saw the Black Panther. So it's Black Panther Group. And I'm sure when we came back, Kiran gave a full briefing to John on what he had seen. So I want to assure Kiran that the Black Panther Group is completely with her. We are there 24/7, whatever you need from us. And we want to continue the pandemic relationship. The pandemic also brought to us a sense of impermanence. And we spent many evenings plotting vacations to take. The only sad thing is that when we have 10 of us, we have 1 seat missing. So we really miss John whenever we get together. But John, you're a great guy. We love you, we miss you, and we want to give Kiran all our support. All the best, Kiran.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nilekani. Indeed, all of us are there with Kiran standing proud. Hector Era, a dear friend and business colleague who has traveled all the way from Madrid to be here today with us and pay his tributes to John, I would now call upon you, Hector, kindly be here.
Yes, I just have come from Madrid to personally and sadly say goodbye to my good friend, John Shaw. How couldn't I be here sharing our pain with all of you and paying him his tribute after spending together so many magic moments in so many different places? Certainly, we enjoyed a very unique relation. with him and what Juan calls our Indian family. That's the way we feel it. Full of funny anecdotes and joy, many of them in Sitges, his favorite place for golfing, very close to his beloved Barcelona. We have even dressed ourselves with beautiful skirts just to look Scottish like him for his birthday parties. He was so much interested in Spain and its history that we traveled all over our country to Sevilla, Granada, Córdoba, Santander, San Sebastián, Toledo, Segovia, looking for history knowledge and always enjoying his positive spirit and goodness. All of them unforgettable journeys. I can still remember how he stayed for 3 days without going out in the Hotel Maria Cristina in San Sebastián, because he textually said to have found the best bed he ever slept on. We are going to miss from now on those glowing kisses that he was often sending to us when he was having fun or just eating or drinking something he liked. We have also had many proofs of his great sensitivity. I will never forget his tears falling always he was listening to Adele's Someone Like You. Dear friends, it is well known that behind a great woman, there's always a great man. That was John Shaw. Rest in peace, my dear friend. I am pretty sure that you will find a good place where to meet again and getting fun together. Hopefully not too soon. And now a few words to Kiran. My dear Kiran, unfortunately, you have lost two precious treasures in a very short period of time. But we have been witness of your extreme dedication to both of them, John and Mommy, during all of your life. You did the same too with John's parents, who we also met in Glenmore a couple of times, having the chance to see how much you took care of them. We have seen you giving them lots of love and full attention every single day during most of their lives too. They are certainly irreplaceable, but you are a very strong woman, and I am sure that you will continue giving as you always did. You must be very proud and satisfied of all what you did for them, but it's now time for you for receiving our love, care, and support. Juan and I want you to know that you can fully count on your Spanish family to continue looking for new magic moments together, always with the beautiful memories in mind of so many good times shared with our beloved John. We love you, Kiran. We love John. Thank you.
Thank you, Hector. We now turn to some more friends of John who have joined from various parts of the world through Zoom. And I would like to start with Mr. Russell Walls, a director on the Biocon board and also an old colleague of John from Coates Viala days. He would say a few words. Mr. Russell joins us from London.
It is my great privilege to say a few words of tribute to John. John and I both hail from Glasgow, and although we didn't know each other in those days, we are both graduates of Glasgow University, to which many of you will know that John recently made a record-breaking donation to fund a research facility named as the Mazumdar Shah Advanced Research Centre. It was opened as recently as 6 weeks ago. John had previously also made a very significant donation to his old school, the High School of Glasgow, and both are a testament to John's generosity and love for the city of Glasgow, where he was brought up. Like many Scots, Scotland was too small for his ambitions, and from university, he joined the multinational textile company Coates, which was where our paths crossed over 50 years ago. At that time, in 1971, John was happily based in sunny Acapulco in Mexico, when he was advised by head office that he was to succeed me as the chief accountant in a Scottish knitwear factory in rainy, cold Alloa. Somewhat curiously, only a few miles from where Kieran's parents had once lived for a short time, and where Mummy had regularly pushed Kieran down the street in a pram. You can imagine how happy he was with this move. But as a result, John and I became firm friends, and our paths crisscrossed many times over the next few decades as we both spent time in various countries around the world. I remember once arriving in Chennai to meet up with John and transfer to the Madura Coats company plane, but security would not let me through without a stamp on the label on my briefcase. I didn't have a label, so stalemate ensued until John, with great authority and aplomb, simply instructed the man to stamp the bag itself, which of course left no mark, but honour was satisfied all round. John was always up for a party, very often being the life and soul of it, and in days gone by he loved his wine, his brandy and his cigars. He lived the life of a true bachelor until, as managing director of Madura Coats, he found himself based in Bangalore. And guess what? Kieran and he found each other. However, John was soon transferred to a senior managerial appointment based in London, which involved him spending time in Amsterdam. And guess who was also regularly visiting Amsterdam at that time, negotiating the acquisition of a minority stake in Biocon from Unilever? Happy coincidence or divine intervention? Who knows? But as they say, the rest is history. So having lived life to the full as a bachelor, John then lived it even better in Bangalore after marriage to Kieran. John had a unique combination of immensely good common sense and a great sense of humour. He was very pragmatic and was extremely financially articulate. He had a booming voice, and it was common currency in Coats before the days of speakerphones, that if you wanted to protect your eardrums on a call with John, it was necessary to keep the receiver at arm's length, or better still, on the desk. He was very much a people person, being very popular with colleagues at all levels, but did not suffer fools gladly. And he and Kieran combined naturally to drive the success of the fledgling biotech, selling the enzymes business and developing the biopharma business into what it is today. It goes without saying that he will be sadly missed, not just by Kieran and the wider family, but by an array of friends and business contacts all across the world. Everybody loved John, and the world is poorer for his premature passing. May he rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walls. We all know John was extremely fond of Scottish art, and we have today with us John's dearest artist friend, Archie Forrest, who will share a few words. Archie joins us from Glasgow. Over to you.
Oh, this one let him.
Is it me now? Hi, Kieran. Hi to all of you out there that maybe I met when I visited Bangalore many years ago. Can I just say it's a real privilege for me to be asked to say something about my dear friend, about my love and feelings for John Shaw, who, without John Shaw, I wouldn't be who I am today. He contributed so much to the growth of me as an individual, as he did to many, as everybody can witness today. I first met John, I didn't realise, but over 20 odd years ago. He came to my studio with a mutual friend, Pete Scott, an architect. Obviously, John had plans in his head, but I didn't know about them then, but he's wanted to form a collection of art. I had just sent a stack of stuff down to London. I was having a one-man show, so there was very little in my studio, except this little small painting that I think it must have been rejected by the gallery, but it was something quite personal to me. It was something that falls from the brush, as we say as painters. John looked at it, loved it, bought it, as that was the start of our relationship and our friendship. He left saying he would phone me to find out if I had any more paintings, and you'll understand that there's lots of people leave my studio saying stuff like that. But John did phone. In fact, he phoned many times, and obviously what I'm about to say, there's a duplication from other friends that picked up in John's characteristics.
As I'm doing this, I realise I'm new to this game. This is my first ever Zoom. And I'm thinking back to John and the technology of those days, long before that little black box we have called an iPhone that does everything. In my big studio, I thought it was a state-of-art technology. It was half the size of a rickshaw, it just as noisy, but it was a phone, a fax, an answering machine. And John would often phone in the morning, and I would put on my best business voice, 3375, as you did. And then this booming voice shouted, "Archie, John Shaw." And I used to think to myself, as if it could be anybody else. It was the most booming voice. And then he would ask me, "Are you still painting, making those marvelous things that you do?" And I would often tell him that sometimes I'd hit a low, and no sooner he would give you some funny story, a reason to get you up back on your feet again and put you back into the system. I've written all these notes because I might tear them up because everybody else has said all the things I was going to say. But going back to my notes, just to jog my memory, I'm struggling now to remember when Kieran came into my life. All these years ago, it was always John Shaw, John Shaw, John Shaw. And then it became Kieran and John, just like inseparable, like Tom and Jerry, Flanagan and Alan, Marks and Spencer. It was the duo that then came to the studio and paid visits. And I feel really, really privileged to, because they were a young partner there, and they were obviously, both of them had dreams in their heads. But I witnessed them talk about building Glenmore. Viacom was a baby then, goodness, it was comparison to now, it was just a baby. And Glenmore, I don't know if it even existed, but it was in their heads. And they came to the studio, and I remember Kieran, she looked at one of my paintings, ended up buying it, but she changed the whole plan of Glenmore simply based on this little hamlet I had painted in Mallorca. She loved it. The roofs went off in all various directions, and it became Glenmore. And that's another privilege, just to feel that I'm in there as part of the bricks. But we visited Glenmore as a family, John's invitation, and again, my memories coincide with others. The Sinatra booming out at the pool, meeting mum and dad, and mummy, the oldest entrepreneur on the planet. Absolutely marvelous. And me surrounded by all of my paintings. Goodness, it was paradise. Absolutely paradise. Very, very fond memories of our time there together. Let me just look at some notes again to jog my memory. Yes, he used to play all that American songbook, Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra. We shared so much as friends, really, at the end of the day. John said that I was his favourite Scottish artist, world famous in India, but don't laugh. That is Scottish humour, world famous in India. In truth, I think the bonus of his frequent visits was that I had a really, really upmarket espresso coffee machine and a big stash of chocolate biscuits. And that was the way to John's heart. An espresso, chocolate biscuits. I would often witness them as I turned away, the wee hand taking another one from the plate, like a wee boy stealing. It was another wee biscuit there, actually, that'd be fine. And then the things I won't miss about John is when I would often put a new painting on the easel and he would go up, give it the usual John inspection, say nothing, and then slap me once or twice on the tummy. That was John's mark of approval. Thanks, John, for that. Goodness, so I wonder I'm still alive myself. Goodness. But the frequent visits came from John and Kieran. the duo, I used to call them the A-team, Tom and Jerry, the A-team. They complemented so much in everything. It was humorous to watch them decide which painting he liked, she liked, and somehow or other they came to a mutual decision, oftentimes to my benefit, because if there was a feeling that was that one or the other one, that John would just say, "Oh, we'll take the two," and that was me alive for another year. You've got to realise that artists, well, you'd probably do, but we live on a wee edge of life. We're either absolutely full of money or skint, as we say in Scotland, no money at all. But the saviour John often came at times when there was a loaf of bread to be bought and a bottle of wine, and John served that purpose very, very well. And as I said to him, I wouldn't be me without John. He just contributed so much. And on a more serious note, I was fortunate enough to be with a good gallery in London and another equally good one in Edinburgh. But with galleries, they sometimes want you to sign contracts, and you can give up your artistic freedom unwittingly. And with John, I never did sign a contract because I always had my big pal at the back who I knew that if I get stuck, he would help me out in some way or other. So he gave me the freedom often to stand my ground with the gallery, to show them that I wasn't wholly dependent on them, as you can be. And that was because of John gave me the confidence, the security, and that drive that you had. Get on there, son, get those paintings done and we'll get you sorted out. John and I loved, it's quite funny the conversations we had out with the serious world of art, painting. But we loved a shirt with a long tail, and we liked gentlemen's leather loafers. We liked straight talking. We loved a good joke. I mean, John absolutely, as Kieran does too. I just always, if it's a good joke, you hear Kieran's hearty laugh, and it's so worthwhile to tell him a story or two. What else? Where am I going to? What can I go back to? Well, all I can really say is I had. It was most fortunate, but Kieran, and I must thank you, my dear girl, for taking the trouble to bring John only 6 weeks back to do our usual thing, a bit of lunch round the table, a bit of chat, a few jokes. That was so good, an opportunity for me to see my old pal. Obviously, communication wasn't what it used to be, but I took pleasure. I sat with him, high-fiving as we did all night, and I showed him some paintings recently finished on my phone, another bit of technology, and he looked at them and he actually, you could see, obviously, he was enjoying it. And the next minute, it was the thumbs up from John. That was always a good sign for me. So I think I've said enough. I've lost a good pal, a patron, a generous man. I got a chance to thank him and tell him that I loved him and for his support, for his fantastic generosity to the city of Glasgow, which he loved. He loved, but I'll tell a story. I go off at tangents, but I met the nice man, Juan. He came to my studio. He loved Barcelona, John. He kept threatened. Well, we threatened to go together. It would have been marvellous because John knew the language and we both shared the love of a glass of wine, good food. It would have been an education for me to be introduced to Barcelona. I've been once or twice, but not under that kind of circumstance to get to know it. He loved Barcelona, absolutely loved it. And he brought me to see Juan. He brought Juan to see me, and it was another one of John's wee things that he liked to do, like a wee kid. He said to me on the side, "Archie, my dear Juan here, if he sees one of your paintings, tell him no, he's not to buy it." He says, "because I'm going to buy it as a gift for him." So we had a look at the studio, and I was putting paintings up as you do, and Juan stopped and thought, oh, that's really, and this is saying hello to me, Archie. Can I buy it? And I said, no, that painting's not for you. I'm not selling that to you, man. He says, why ever not? I says, John's bought it before you, but you be pleased to know you're getting it as a present.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. We will now quickly move on to Ian Clark, who's another close friend of John from Glasgow, who managed his Scottish art collection over the years. Over to you, Ian, and kindly be brief.
Thank you. Dear Kieran, family and friends of John, I'm deeply honoured to have this opportunity to say a final goodbye to my friend John. If I could have one word to describe him, it would be presence. I met John when a mutual friend brought him to my art gallery. As soon as I saw him, I knew we would be friends. John was big in every way, upright, tall and handsome, charismatic, open-hearted, and full of fun. You could not fail to like John, and once you met him, you would never forget him. John was a force of nature, unique in his forthright manner, his speech, his booming voice, and his charm. He was something to behold. Highly intelligent, multilingual, well-read, well-traveled, and well-mannered. He had a thorough grip on art, history, science, politics, and of course, business and finance. That first meeting many years ago was the start of a great adventure in art for both of us. John loved art, and he had a keen eye, and he was very passionate about building his collection. Together, we amassed a wonderful array of Scottish art. John became a patron, friend, and supporter to many contemporary artists, often helping establish their careers. What fun we had visiting artist studios, going to auctions. John always happy, encouraging, and supportive. My relationship with John was not just about art. He became a true friend, mentor, and confidant. He helped steer me through difficult periods of my life with thoughtful insight and advice. When John met Kieran, the true treasure of his life, he told me that he realized he could not live life without her and that they were getting married. Then I met Kieran and I thought, wow, what a pair. Look out, world. And I was right. Look at what they have achieved. What a force, what power. Two bright stars brought together to do great things, not for themselves, but to fulfill their agreed upon ambition, to make the world a better place for other people. And I am a proud witness to how hard they have worked to make that happen. As John's health declined, I was fortunate to spend time with him over the last couple of months in Glasgow and in Barcelona. Although constrained, John accepted his fate with resolve and stoicism. I was deeply touched to observe the care, love, and patience that Kieran gave John. It was plain to see they simply adored each other. John was also given care and kindness by his brother Alistair and sister-in-law Jessie, and by his two nurses, Toms and Bastian, both of whom treated him wonderfully. Meeting John all these years ago, and subsequently having his loyal friendship, has been one of the privileges of my life. Blessings, my friend, you will not be forgotten.
Thank you, Ian. I know we're running behind schedule, so I will try to be quick and see how we can accelerate the whole process. I will now quickly invite Miss Annie Bain, wife of late Neville Bain, who was the managing director of Coatesville and an independent director of the board of Biocon for many years, and he knows John extremely well, and John really admired him. Annie is joining us from London.
Greetings, everybody. Kieran, I'll make this as brief as I can and read quickly. You could always hear John before you saw him, that big, booming voice greeting you with the wonderful warmth that made up the man he was. Always so welcoming, with an all-embracing hug, he had a way of making you feel special. So kind, thoughtful, and generous with his time. With his caring nature, he touched and enriched the lives of everyone he met. My family adored him and Kieran. John was a work colleague and friend of my late husband Neville for many years, and Neville respected him both professionally and personally. In due course, John introduced Neville to Kieran, and we became part of the Biocon family. I know for Neville, these were amongst the happiest times of his professional life, working with John and Kieran. And for me, it introduced me to India and her wonderful people who hold such a special place in my heart. When Neville passed away, John and Kieran were so kind to me, something I will never forget. What fantastic memories I have of our times together, how we laughed and sung our way through many occasions in both London and India. Great evenings spent in Glenmore, John always there guiding and making sure everyone was happy and well looked after. He and Kieran were such a great couple, made to be together, two halves of a whole. Their love was evident to everyone who met them. John will be sorely missed by so many people, both in business and personally. He leaves a huge hole in the lives of the family and the friends left behind, but with so many wonderful memories of him to cherish, he will live on in spirit with us forever. Rest in peace, my dear friend. Until we meet again, I hope you and Neville are up there somewhere, enjoying a wee glass of something. Warms my heart to think it. Kieran, we love you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. I will now request Abhi Shah, a close friend of Kieran and John, to pay his tributes, please.
Thank you all for being here today. Kieran and John have been like family for the past 2 decades and a source of great Gujarati food whenever I'm in Bangalore. What made John special are not just his accomplishments in business and philanthropy, but his amazing sense of humor, positivity, and above all, strong support of Kieran to succeed back when it was truly a man's world. We spent more time together in recent years when Kieran and John would come to the US for his cancer treatment every 3 months. And it was inspiring to see him remain positive while battling an evil like cancer. There are so many fond memories with John, escaping to catch a movie in New York when Kieran was not around, mischievously breaking into the kitchen to get a piece of cake. Then, of course, she caught us and we got kicked out. And probably my favorite, at my 40th birthday celebration, right before COVID, when John was in all his glory, cracking jokes and having a great time. In the end, it's not the years in your life that count, but it is the life in those years, as Abraham Lincoln said. John lived a full life, and while it's natural to feel sorrow at this moment, It's also a time to celebrate his life and freedom for suffering. Saying goodbye this soon doesn't feel right. So I'll leave it with, we love you, John, and you'll live on in our hearts forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhi, and you really summed it up well. John, as we know, really believed in living life to the fullest, and he was extremely popular among Kiran's girlfriends. I would now request Meru Pai, one of Kiran and John's closest friends, to read out a tribute on behalf of the girly gang.
I speak on behalf of all Kiran's close girlfriends. Most of us who have known her since she first set up Biocon in her garage in Koramangala. We have been part of her life through all her trials, tribulations, success, and glory. And in early 1990s, John became part of our lives. His beautiful and stylish bungalow on Edward Road became our haunt. His booming voice, his genuine joie de vivre, his keen intellect, knowledge of art and history and politics made him very, very special. He was a constant and caring friend to all of us. A loving and devoted husband, he was always at Kiran's side in all she did and took great joy and pride in all her success and all her achievements. We still cannot believe that our dear John is no longer with us. Dearest John, you will always be loved and missed by all of us. You fought the good fight with courage and fortitude and can now rest in peace, knowing that yours was a life well lived, and you will always live on in our hearts and in our memories. And dear Kiran, please know we will always be there for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Meru. I would now call upon Mr. Kunal Kashyap, a longtime friend and associate of John, to say a few words. Kunal.
I had the privilege of knowing John for over 20 years, both on a professional as well as a personal front. In more ways than one, John stood head and shoulders above us. People have talked about a woman behind a successful man. John broke that stereotype. A man of few words, but of strong principles and unwavering trust in a few which lasted a lifetime. The John I knew was witty, loved his music, wine, and good food. We as a family remember the evenings spent with John talking about football, telling us about his time in Spain and Venezuela, listening to music, and playing with the dogs he adored and loved. I will miss the work trips with John. The days were busy with work and the evenings filled with fun in the best of bars and restaurants. John leaves behind a legacy, lovely memories, and will be missed by all the lives he touched. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the speakers for your heart-touching tributes paid to Mr. John Shaw. You brought him alive in your words. I believe many more from the audience would like to pay homage to John, sir. I would request you to kindly write your tributes in the tributes book placed on the remembrance table. Before we close the ceremony, we would like to play a very short AV as a mark of our love and respect for John, sir. AV, please. While the AV comes up, I would like to, on behalf of Kiran Mazumdar Shaw and all the members of the Mazumdar and Shaw families, I would like to thank everyone for being here in person and all the other friends, family, board members of the three companies, our partners, associates who've joined us virtually from different parts of the world. and many more of our associates who joined the prayer meeting through the live stream on YouTube. We will miss your physical presence, John sir, but you will continue to live in our hearts and inspire us to do better each day and make a difference to the world around us. Heartfelt prayers for your soul to rest in eternal peace. Om Shanti. I now request everyone to please proceed for the refreshments as the evening comes up.
Sabtuta